Hey everyone! So let's talk about a question, a really simple one on the surface. What is art? Seems easy, right? Well, 100 years ago, that very question basically tore the art world in two. It sparked a total revolution, and that's what we're diving into today.
Okay, check this out. In 1909, a group called the Futurists dropped this bombshell of a statement. A speeding automobile is more beautiful than the Nike of Samothrace. Whoa, I mean, think about that. They were literally saying a car is more beautiful than one of the most famous classical sculptures in history. They were done with dusty old statues. For them, beauty was speed, technology, machines. This wasn't just a new idea. It was a total rejection of the past. It was the starting gun for the revolution.
So that brings us to the central mystery here. How on earth did art get from this to that in just a few decades? I mean, look, on one side you've got Monet's Olympia from 1863. Now, it was definitely scandalous back then, but it's still, a realistic painting of a person. But then, just 44 years later, damn, Picasso hits us with Les Demoiselles d'Avignon. It's broken, it's aggressive, you're seeing these women from all angles at once, so how? How did we get from A to B? That's what we're going to figure out.
All right, so to really get what this rebellion was all about, we have to know what the rules were in the first place. What were they actually fighting against?
For a long time, we're talking centuries, the answer to what is art was pretty straightforward. Art was about skill. It was about how realistically you could represent the world. Could you paint a portrait that looked exactly like the person? Could you create a landscape that felt like you could walk right into it? The artist's job was basically to be a perfect mirror.
But then, right around the turn of the 20th century, a new generation of artists looked at that mirror and just thought, this is boring. They decided to turn the mirror around, to look inward instead of outward. And that's where the first real rebellion kicks off.
And they started asking this totally game-changing question. What if art isn't about capturing reality at all? What if it's about expressing raw emotion? I mean, what if the colors you paint with don't have to look real? What if the point isn't to paint a tree, but to paint how you feel when you look at that tree? This shift from looking out to looking in, it changed absolutely everything.
And let me tell you, people were not ready for this. The reaction was basically shock and total outrage. When Henri Matisse showed his Woman with a Hat in 1905, a critic was so horrified by the wild colors and crazy brushwork that he called the artists fauves, which is French for wild beasts. And, funny enough, the name stuck. An entire art movement, a type of expressionism, was literally born from an insult.
So that's really the key to Expressionism. These artists were painting from the inside out. The distorted shapes, the crazy colors, they weren't trying to show you what the world looked like. They were trying to make you feel what they felt, whether it was anxiety or joy or just unease. Suddenly, art wasn't just something to look at. It was a psychological experience.
Okay, so the art world is just starting to wrap its head around art being all about emotion. And then, right on cue, another group of artists comes along and says, that's cool, but what about the way we actually see things?
This was the big puzzle that guys like Pablo Picasso and George Braque got obsessed with. Think about it. Your eyes can only see something from one angle at a time, right? But your brain knows that a coffee cup has a front, a back, sides, a top. It knows the whole object. So they asked, what if we could show all of that, everything our brain knows, on one flat canvas, all at the same time?
The best way to think about cubism is like a broken mirror. Imagine dropping a mirror. Each shard reflects the same thing, but from a slightly different angle. A cubist painter basically does that on purpose. They shatter an object into these little geometric pieces, showing you the front, the side, the top, all jumbled together. Then they put all those pieces back together on the canvas. The result is this complex image that, in a weird way, shows you more about the object than a simple photo ever could.
And with that, Cubism just completely demolished the idea of 3D perspective that art had been using for like 500 years. It was a painting style for a new fractured world, a world that was dealing with brand new ideas like Einstein's theory of relativity. A painting wasn't a window into another world anymore. Nope, it was its own thing, an object with its own rules.
So we've had art as raw feeling. We've had art as a new way of seeing. But the next step? Well, this was the most radical one yet. Because it asked, what if the art isn't even the object? What if the physical thing in front of you doesn't really matter?
Okay, this is where things get really, really weird. Because up until now, no matter how abstract things got, you still had an artist, a paintbrush, and a canvas, right? There was still some kind of skill involved. But one guy, Marcel Duchamp, was about to blow all of that up.
Yep. In 1917, Marcel Duchamp went to a plumbing store, bought a urinal, turned it upside down, signed it with a fake name, R. Mutt, and submitted it to an art show. He called it Fountain. I mean, seriously. He didn't make it. He didn't change it. He just picked it. He chose it.
And this is how we got the ready-made. The point was, the art wasn't the urinal itself. The art was the idea. It was the act of choosing an everyday object, putting it in a gallery, and forcing everyone to ask the question, wait, why isn't this art? And just like that, the most important part of art could now be the concept behind it, not the object itself.
So, where does this all leave us? After decades of artists just breaking every single rule they could find, what did we end up with? What did we learn?
Well, it led to this really important shift in thinking, from what we call modernism to postmodernism. See, the modernists, the expressionists, the cubists, they were all asking, what is art? And then shouting out their own radical new answers. But by the time we get to the second half of the century, the postmodernists had a different take. They were still asking what is art, but they weren't interested in giving an answer. They thought the question itself was the interesting part. So in the end, all these revolutions, Expressionism, Cubism, Duchamp's crazy ideas, they didn't lead to one single new answer. There wasn't a new rule book to replace the old one.
Instead, they did something way more profound. They completely blew the question wide open. They shattered the very idea that there could be one single answer. They created a space where art could be, well, pretty much anything.
So, let's just run through that real quick. In the 20th century, art could be an emotion. It could be a new perspective. It could be a provocative idea. It could even be just the experience you have when you look at it. Ultimately, art became a question about itself.
And that's probably the most important takeaway from this whole century of revolution. The question, what is art, is no longer something for stuffy academies or critics to decide. It's been handed over to all of us. After all this, the most important answer might just be your own.